It's been about 4 months since I photographed the night sky, and that's the longest it's been in the 7 or 8 years since I started photographing the night sky. So I'm super excited for tonight. Weather looks amazing. Got these incredible ancient tombs on the southwest coast of Turkey in Fethiye, and I've brought with me Fujifilm XE-4. It's a compact crop sensor camera, and I bought it for my personal life and street photography, stuff that I don't really share online, but I'm interested to see what it can do as an astro camera. I'm also going to use the 18-55 kit lens, so hopefully in today's video I can help you guys who have kit lenses and more affordable gear, and I can share some tips and tricks for getting the most out of a basic setup. Just gotta wait for it to get dark. Oh wow, so I haven't been out photographing the stars in so long, I completely forgot how to photograph the stars. So before I came out, I read a book called Photographing the Night Sky by this lovely chap, Alan Wallace, and it really got me up to speed, and I learned loads of tips and tricks that I can share with you guys about how to get the most out of a basic setup. If you'd like to buy that book, there'll be a link in the video description down below. And to keep the setup basic, I'm using a Benro carbon fiber slim tripod. For £99, you get a carbon fiber tripod and a ball head. Now, obviously, it's not the sturdiest tripod in the world, but for the price, it's pretty damn good. And so let's talk about the settings I've got here. So with the kit lens, I'm shooting at the widest focal length, which is 18mm. On a full frame camera, that would be 27mm. Then we have the aperture, which is how wide the opening inside the lens is. And we want that opening to be as wide as possible to let as much light in as possible. So at 18mm on this lens, the widest aperture I can use is f2.8, which is surprisingly good for the kit lens, because kit lenses normally open up to about f3.5. And then after that, we've gone for a shutter speed of 15 seconds. And I did that by using the 300 rule. So because this is a crop sensor camera, we can use the 300 rule. You basically do 300 divided by 18, which is the focal length that I'm shooting at. And it comes out at about 16.666666. And that's basically a good shutter speed to have where the stars are not trailing in your image. So if you expose for too long, the stars begin to trail and they no longer look nice and round and pinpoint. So that's why I've set my shutter speed to 15 seconds, because it's the closest I could get to 16.666666. As for the focus, I'm using manual focus, and I basically put a bright star sort of in the middle of the frame, use the zoom, the manual focus assist zoom, so that when I turn the manual focus dial, it zooms in really far, and then you swing the manual focus ring back and forth until that star is as small as you can possibly make it. Then you know you're focused on the stars and they're all going to look amazing. Just make sure you're not too close to your foreground subject, otherwise it might be a little bit blurry. But in this case, I think we should be fine. And then I'm using an ISO of 3200, which is producing a fairly decent looking image. I don't really want it to be any brighter or any darker. So you can use the ISO as like your final control of the brightness of the image. So I've got a composition here with a tomb, and we've got Ursa Major, the Big Dipper or the Big Bear, in the sky. So I've also set a 2-second delay on the shutter button, because when I press the shutter button, the camera is going to shake a little bit. So it's nice to give it 2 seconds or maybe 5 seconds just to settle down and stop shaking before the exposure starts. So good tip there to make sure that you don't have any shakiness in your images. I've also turned off high ISO noise reduction and long exposure noise reduction. I'll talk more about that later. And maybe we could do some tests as well. But I'm just going to get this shot and see what we can get in a single exposure with this little compact crop sensor camera.
So the image on the left is straight out of camera. I was pleasantly surprised for a crop sensor camera and a kit lens. The image on the right is a quick edit that I did, but before I show you how I did that edit, let's look at how we can improve the quality of this image before we even edit it.
So that's what we got with a single exposure. One thing I can do is to get better image quality, to get less noise in the image, is something called image stacking for noise reduction. So I'm basically going to take multiple images, the exact same scene, same settings. I'm going to use the intervalometer built into the Fujifilm camera to take multiple exposures, one after the other. And I'm going to take those into some post-production software and do something called stacking, which is really going to help me get rid of the noise.
So here are the images I captured, 16 images, basically exactly the same, except the stars move a little bit. So to stack these images, we have to use specialist software. So if you're on a Windows computer, you want to use Sequitur, which is free. And if you're on a Mac, you want to use Starry Landscape Stacker, which is, I think it's about $39. And I won't show you guys how to use those in this video because I've already got 2 videos on my channel. One, a tutorial on how to use Sequitur, and another one on how to use Starry Landscape Stacker. But let's just take a look at the improvements. If I zoom in here, look how clean the sky is compared to this image on the right. And the detail in the rock tomb here is just way better, it's way cleaner. I haven't got all of this fuzzy noise. Again, horizon nice and clean. And yeah, just look at the extra detail in these flowers on the left hand side. So stacking has really cleaned up the noise and it looks a lot more detailed and sharper and much better quality. So this is the stacked image, and I'm just going to do a quick edit using my Lightroom preset. So I would normally do the lens correction, but that's already taken care of. So step 2 is to choose the tone. So I'm just going to flick through these presets, see which one looks the best. Iridium looks nice. Meteor maybe. I'm going to go with Iridium. And then even though the stacking has got rid of a load of noise, we can still add a little bit of noise reduction. Just going to use the 20. White balance, auto. Let's see if that fixes anything for us. Nothing really changed, although the image looks pretty good to me. It's a little blue tint to the sky, which is not too bad. Now we can move on to the color grading. So just going to scroll over these and see. Oh, that one's nice. Mars, Mercury, ooh, Neptune, Saturn. I'm kind of liking Saturn, so I'm going to apply that. And there's some local AI presets that I've been playing with to hopefully bring an update to the presets pretty soon. Now, next up, we're going to come to the masking, and I want to darken the sky a little bit, but I don't want to affect the rock tomb. So I'm going to create a sky mask. But not only that, I'm going to intersect that mask with a linear gradient. And so I could drag a linear gradient over the sky and it doesn't affect the rock tomb. It intersects with the sky selection that I had previously. And now I could just come to preset and come down to AW darken sky. And you can play with the amount. So somewhere around there is looking pretty good. I'm going to create a new mask. This time it's going to be a brush. And the preset I'm going to use is the AW foreground pop. I'm just going to try and bring a bit of the detail out of this foreground here. It starts off subtle, but you can keep brushing. And that looks a bit better now. There's a little bit more detail in the foreground. I'm going to create a new mask. This time it's going to be a radial gradient. Drag it out. Move it down a little bit maybe. And I want to invert this mask. And then I'm going to select in the presets the AW vignette. That's added a bit of a vignette to the image. You can feather that in a little bit. Maybe increase the amount. Not too strong. That's looking good. Might make some final tweaks to the colors in the HSL. So let's come to the hue and make those yellows slightly more orange. And I might bring the saturation of the blues down a little bit more. So something like that. And maybe the orange as well, it's too much. I want to keep the colors nice and subtle. There we go. Now let's look at some other ways that we can improve our images.
So I've got a scene here with one of the bigger tombs here and the constellation Orion in the sky. Problem is 18mm focal length, which is the widest this kit lens can do, just doesn't capture the whole scene. It's not wide enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot a panorama. So I'm going to take one image quite low down, and then I'm going to pan the camera up, take another image, pan the camera up, take another image, until I've got all of the scene that I want to capture. And when you're panning, it's a good idea to have about 40 to 50% overlap between each of the images. So the top 50% of the first image will be the same as the bottom 50% of the next image after I've panned up. So when I'm moving the camera, I can see a bright star on the LCD screen, and I make sure that I don't move that star more than 50% across the frame, and that way I know I've got a 50% overlap between the images. So I'm just going to capture probably 3, maybe 4 images to get the whole scene that I need. Then I'll show you guys quickly how to do a panorama. And a panorama is a really great way to get better image quality out of a basic camera and lens setup, and I'll tell you why back in the office.
Here I have the images for the panorama. This was the first frame, then I moved up 50%, second frame, move up 50%, and move up 50% again. And in Lightroom you can just select those 4, right mouse click, come to photo merge, panorama, try out the different projections to see which one works best. So I'm going to go with perspective, but I'm going to drag out the boundary warp a little bit, and somewhere around there looks good. We can use the auto crop, and yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'll merge that and then edit it like I did the previous image, and this was the final result. I'm quite happy with it. You can see the Milky Way, a real faint region of the Milky Way as well, constellation Orion, the Pleiades, the open star cluster, and the zodiacal light. And there's really good detail in the foreground as well. This is really surprising for a kit lens. And the good thing about panoramas is I now have a really high resolution image. You can see it's 7,500 pixels by 10,950 pixels. So we've produced a really high resolution image. The noise, the grainy noise, is a lot smaller in the image now compared to just a single exposure. So it appears to be more clean, way more clean than a single exposure would. However, when you do zoom in, you can still see there is quite a bit noisy. So what can we do about this?
So now we've learned 2 ways to really improve the image quality of a basic camera and lens setup. There's stacking to get rid of the noise, and then there's panoramas, which can produce images that appear to have less noise. They're much higher in resolution, and they just look amazing. So what we can do now is combine those 2 techniques. So I'm going to do the same panorama that I just did. However, for each of the panels, I'm going to capture 16 images, stack them, and then create the panorama.
So here I have 16 images for each panel of the panorama, and I like to stack these in Lightroom. You can select all of the similar images, come to stacking, and normally you'd have an option to stack, but I've already stacked them, so you can see that I can close down those 16 if I want to. But basically I'm going to take those 16, I'm going to stack them, I'm going to take the next 16, stack those, and then you end up with 3 images, which I eventually stitched into a panorama. This was the final result, and I'm super happy with it. The foreground, very detailed, it's so clean, there's just no noise. The sky as well, nice and clean. The colors look amazing. We've got a faint section of the Milky Way, Orion, Pleiades, and managed to squeeze in all the stars of the winter circle asterism as well. And you just wouldn't believe that this image was captured with a crop sensor and a kit lens. Its quality is on par with half of the images I've taken with my full frame camera and expensive lenses. And I'm super happy with this result. I'll be very happy to share this on my website and Instagram, and I'm sure nobody would realize it was captured with such a basic setup.
Okay, so this is what you can do with a basic camera and a kit lens to really improve your image quality. But let's say you wanted to upgrade. Is it better to upgrade the lens, or maybe buy a star tracker, or maybe invest in some education? Well, that's what we'll be looking into in the next video, so make sure you hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon so that you get notified of when part 2 of this video comes out. And yeah, if you're going out to enjoy the night sky anytime soon, I wish you good luck and clear skies.